he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. Let hope arise and make the darkness hide. My faith is dead, I need a resurrection somehow. No, I'm lost in your freedom. And this world I'll overcome. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring like a lion. He's roaring. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. My God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. He's roaring, he's roaring shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Let heaven roar and fire fall. Come shake the ground with the sound of revival. Our God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, he's surely alive. He's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. God's not dead, surely.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Good morning and welcome to the King's Report this Monday, November 27th, 2017. 8th year of Chungi, 10th month, 10th day by the Heavenly Calendar. I'm your host, Hyung Sean Moon, the second king of Cheongguk. Let's go first for our AccuWeather forecast to Tim, the agent elder. Tim.
Good morning. It's about 31 degrees right now in the Cheongguk area, and we're going up to a high today of 47 degrees, partly cloudy, and a little bit breezy. We got some wind in the area. You see in the radar there that there's no precipitation around the Cheongguk area, but a little bit up in the upstate New York around Albany, and also a little bit down by the Mason-Dixon line there. But we're in a pretty stable weather period right now, here now and for the next few days. We're at our historical average right now of going up to 47 today, but then it's going to be warming up a little bit over the next couple of days, getting up to a high of 54 on Wednesday before it starts coming back down. A little bit of rain, it looks like, on Friday, possibly, but other than that, we're going to have mostly cloudy and a lot of sun as well, so depending on the day. But I don't see very much precipitation in the next several days.
Wow, okay, so it's going to be really pristine weather.
Yes.
Very nice weather. That's fantastic. We're going to pick up the Overlander Jeep today. Yes.
It'd be a good day to do that.
Yes, you know, the YJM Charitable Foundation has given a restricted donation. A restricted, that means can only be used for that purpose.
Yes.
Okay. For the Peace Police, Peace Militia commander vehicle.
Yes.
So it has only for the church cannot use it for any other purpose.
Yes. And people can do this. You know.
Yes, people can do it.
Here's some money, and this is how I'd like you to use it. They can do that.
Yes.
And if we say, hey, we don't want, we can say, hey, we don't do that kind of thing, then we have to refuse the money. But in this case, we don't do it because it's very much in line with our mission, Peace Police, Peace Militia.
Yeah. And so we will be going to get the Jeep today, picking it up today, and then I guess Kukchinam will start tricking it out, because I don't know what the heck to do with it.
He knows.
It's a stick shift. It's a stick shift, so I haven't driven a stick shift in years, my gosh.
Well, it's like riding a bicycle.
It is.
You can never forget it.
It is. Apparently, these Jeeps are so powerful that even when it's in, gear one and you have the brake on, the thing moves. So, boy, oh boy, if we're on cliffs and that thing is moving with the brake on, shoot, you better be used to this thing, because you better have that clutch controlled.
Put it in neutral.
Because it's not going to be easy. Not going to be, because sometimes you have to go, back up, and then you have to, go up the umbrella rock and then go, it's like, so. Chief was a little worried about that. He saw the video. Somehow he saw the video of the Overland. Go ahead, guys, put up the pictures of the Overlanders. But he saw the video of the Overlanders. He said, holy schmidt, he said, I'm going to have to teach a king how to parachute.
How to parachute, yeah.
How to parachute. Oh, man. I guess that is something we do have to learn. We do have to learn how to parachute. That is that is something.
Better and better.
That is something I have to learn. I do have to learn. See, the martial arts never end. The martial arts never end. That's what I love about them, you know. I love about the martial arts, they never end. You know, it's like a never-ending learning experience. So if you know, that's why martial arts change your life. Martial arts really changes your life because it's like, there's like a never-ending curve of learning. And that's what I like about, man, look at that thing. Anyways, my camel is gonna be better than that. I'm gonna have the King of Kings rod of iron camel, baby. Yeah, that looks really, it looks cool, but our King of Kings camel is gonna be pretty dope. There you go. There's some images. Ooh, there's a hot one right down the bottom. Go to the bottom. Right there. Yeah. That one looks, that looks nice camel. Oh, that's a nice camel. That's a sweet camel right there. Dang, that's gonna be nice. We're gonna have the rod of iron camel, and we're gonna trick it out. We're gonna have King's Report logos on it, Sanctuary Church logos on it. You know what I mean? So it's a walking billboard. It's gonna be loud to drive in. It's definitely gonna catch attention. I tell you that much. Oh Lord. Okay. Thank you, Tim, for that update. Wish us luck. I'm bringing back the Commando Jeep. We are in Genesis 41 today, folks. We are in Genesis 41. I just looked around this section, and we're actually in the whole story of Joseph. Okay, so Joseph is there, and he's interpreting dreams. And in verse 41 and 9, this is my reading for today. The Pharaoh is dreaming. The Pharaoh is dreaming, verse 9. Then the chief butler spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I remember my faults this day. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker, we each had a dream in one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now there was a young Hebrew man with us there, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream, and it came to pass, just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. Right? He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. That's right, he hanged the baker. Is that right? He hanged the baker? Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon, and he shaved, changed his clothes, and came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have a dream, and there's no one who can interpret it, but I've heard it said that you can understand a dream to interpret it. So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, Behold, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river. Suddenly 7 crows came up out of the river, fine looking and fat. I'm sorry, 7 cows. 7 cows came up out of the rivers, fine looking and fat. They fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and gaunt, such ugliness as I've never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the gaunt and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. When they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were as ugly as at the beginning. So I woke. Also I saw in my dream, and suddenly 7 heads came up on one stalk, full and good. And then behold, 7 heads withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind sprang up after them. And the thin heads devoured the 7 good heads. So I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph the Pharaoh, the dreams of the Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 cows are 7 good years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 thin, ugly cows that came up after are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads, blighted by the east wind, are 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them 7 years of famine will arise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will deplete the land. So the plenty will not be known in the land because of the famine following, for it will be very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Wow. Isn't this amazing? We were just talking about dreams last night during Sunday service.
Yesterday's service. Yes.
We were talking about dreams, and I had like 4 dreams, and I share with everybody, like in my dream, I had control over I can control myself in the dream, and I said, God, what would you like me to learn from this dream while I was in my dream? So dreams are very interesting. It's like a dreamscape. You know, dreams are what many psychologists believe was the first, is actually the progenitor of a lot of art. For example, there are indigenous tribes that have all this art, totem poles, you name it, right? And when you ask them historically what is the landscape from which they're creating, because they don't have, these are very ancient peoples. A lot of the people would say they draw or paint from dreams. So the whole artistic realm, of course, is also another realm where in which artists try to reside in like a dreamscape, okay, in the land of dreams, in imagination, etc. And from those imaginations and dreams, and many of these are uncontrolled, unconscious. This was so interesting. We were talking about last Sunday that human beings, if you look at it from a certain perspective, it may not absolutely be correct, but some thinkers, such as Freud, believe that we are a loosely held collage or unity of subpersonalities, and that these subpersonalities have their own rationale, they have their own drive, they have their own personalities. Okay, so you may have a subpersonality inside of you, which is kind of wacky or kind of nuts, and you may have one that's very rational. And you know what I'm saying? And everybody has these kind of different quote kind of subpersonalities within them, but they're loosely united, and out from them arise different thoughts, etc., etc. But beyond all of them, when somebody is in a sleeping state and your body is in like almost a veritable comatose, I mean, especially when you're REM, rapid eye movement sleeping, where in which you're in the deep sleep mode, you are dreaming, okay? And where do these dreams come from? You're not consciously thinking of these things. You're not consciously imagining these things. Many people believe that dreams are a place where you can store memories, or your brain is attempting to sort through information. And so that sometimes the dreams are scattered, etc. But there's a problem. Sometimes the dreams are very coherent and very structured, very, very structured. Sometimes, like, sometimes they're divided out, but they're actually of the same theme, etc. So it's not as easy or simplistic as saying they're just connected to memory or they're just connected to this or that. They are appearing out of a subconscious realm, a realm that you don't have control over. Okay, that's what's interesting. That even though we crave for control, and human beings who need to have control over our environment, if we don't, we actually go crazy and become depressed and experience a tremendous amount of anxiety. For example, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Professor Emeritus of Psychology and clinical psychologist out of the University of Toronto, was giving an example of people who cannot control their basic environment. He said they are statistically more anxious than others. They have more anxiety. So, people who have to, I can't exactly remember the exact example, because his lectures will go on for 2, 3, 4 hours. I mean, it's just so long. So I don't think I'm ever going to find it unless I watch all his lectures again. But in any case, human beings need to be able to control our environment. If we're in the wild, for example, what is so psychologically terrifying about the wild? There are things beyond our control in the wild, right? In a static environment in our home, We have walls, we have windows, we have protection from wild animals. But as soon as we enter into the wild, one of the terrifying and anxiety-provoking elements of the wild is that there are stress factors which we cannot control. Right? You may be like at camp, and all of a sudden a black bear shows up and he's breathing down your throat like. Oh man, I saw a black bear 300 to 400 pounds. I got it on film on my iPhone while I was still at the lake sanctuary. Holy schmeat, that thing was big. It was a big male, and it was a little bit drizzling, and it was raining, and you could see the breath coming out of his mouth, and it looked humongous. Because we were driving in the car, and it was right there. It was massive. It was huge. It was scary. You know, the face looked. The face looked extremely terrifying. It was not cuddly because we were close. We were about, I would say it was on the road, so it was right near the road. We were maybe 15, 20 yards from it, okay? And as it walked away, as it walked this way, I would follow it. And as it walked that way, I backed up and followed it. But to see an animal that big, and bears are actually not that cute. They've got really big faces and they've got really small eyes. So they actually have bad vision. But that thing was scary looking at. It was scary to look at. I was like, dang, can you imagine that humongous thing? Like you wake up at, you're bushcrafting or you're doing wilderness survival training or you're doing wild camping, and you wake up at night to see something that big looming over your lean-to shelter. I mean, oh, wow. That's why you better have a fire. A fire will keep that thing away, at least from the fire. Oh man, it was big and scary. But that comes back to our brain function. We have a part of the brain which alerts us. It's an alert system. It's an amygdala which alerts us to predators. And so we have a deep microevolutionary pattern in our brain that collates and is like an amalgam and like a conglomeration of all our ancestral experiences with predators. And so when the human being ventured beyond the fire pit and the hearth and the safe zones and entered into the darkness, into the wild, there is reason for us to be terrified of the dark. Because there are monsters in the dark. There are wild animals in the dark that can kill us. I mean, we had to encounter saber-toothed tigers. We had to encounter cougars. We had to encounter tigers and lions and bears, etc. These are all animals that can kill you. Snakes. Satan is being depicted as a snake. Evokes a fear in our microevolutionary amygdala brain, the part of the brain that alerts us to danger and predators. There's a tremendous fight or flight response, etc. Even though you know how to, for example, handle snakes, you still better be careful when it's a poisonous snake, because one mistake, you dead. You know what I mean? So there is a fear response, okay? And it's interesting because your dreams come out. Where are they coming from? What part of your brain? And if they're coming from your brain, what number of cells are they coming from? You see what I'm saying? It's very hard to locate where these things are coming out of the ether. They are immaterial things that are appearing out of your cognitive function. So it's a very fascinating question. Where do our dreams arise from? Of course, in the Bible, as you can see, God gives us dreams, or the cosmic, intelligent creator mind gives us dreams through the void of consciousness, or the void of our subconsciousness, to then come into the present of our consciousness, to then be able to, for us to actually visually or mentally, imaginatively see and experience these things. Because you can be in a dream and it's so real, and you get hit in a dream and you can feel your body collapsing because of that hit. I mean, for example, in some dreams, I've been shot in some dreams, right? And in those dreams I'm shot, my body will literally start clenching and tightening. If I got shot in the stomach or something like that, my body will start clenching and tightening as if I got shot, and then I'll wake up, but you'll see your body going like, you know what I'm saying? 'Cause you got shot in the stomach. And I'm sure a lot of people experience those kind of things too. I can't remember the other day, but it was the other day. I had a dream. I can't remember what the dream was, but I remember in the dream, and I shared it on Sunday service, that during the dream I was conscious enough to be able to stay between that limbo zone between dream and wake state, and I was conscious enough to be able to access my consciousness in the dream, and to be able to say, God, what would you like me to learn from this dream? In the dream. And I was running through something. I was like, it was something related to people militia training, and I had my camo on, and I was running around. Okay, but I said to God, what would you like me to learn from this dream? And then I had another dream on the same night, where in which I was in front of this hut, and I was naked. I was naked, but I was sitting down like in a meditative posture. But I was naked, but sitting in like a meditative posture. Okay, so on the ground, buck naked, and I had like a jacket or something. But anyways, I was meditating in the morning, and we had some Japanese members that were coming, that visited, but then they were leaving. And they were far away from me, so I was like, okay, bye-bye. I just waved them from far away. Then they started walking closer to me, and I was like, oh, crap, people are coming close to me now. So I get my jacket and I have to cover up. Okay, and then this couple, I believe it was an African couple or something like that. They jump out of the bushes, okay, and they say, oh, they want a picture. They want a picture with me. So I'm like, okay, and so I have a jacket, and I say, okay, I'll cover my lower body, so at least you can see my six-pack abs. Okay, and so they say, oh, like a picture, and then so it's weird. So he said he wanted a picture, and the guy picks up like a bottle. It's like a bottle. It's like a not a soda bottle, but it's a soda bottle. And then he's like, oh, okay, you want to take a picture? And he's acting like this is the camera. And then he sprays this crap on me. And he sprays this crap on me, and it's freaking acid, and it's like eating into my body. I'm like, oh, crap. You know what I'm saying? I got surprised. I got surprised with this. And it was very clear that God said, you got to be aware. You got to be aware at all times, because at any point, somebody can use a very vulnerable situation, like where I'm being nice and saying, oh, sure, let's take a picture, things like that. And somebody could use that against you. Somebody could use that to harm you or the queen. And that was, again, God was stimulating my amygdala function before I went to church the next day. And nothing happened, of course. But still, I was on a higher level of alertness. You know what I'm saying? But this is something important in terms of our security. God will give us sometimes some hints or some revelation through dreams. I remember one time I had a dream that our plane, because I was serving Father at the time, and our plane crashed. Okay, crashed. Father's plane crashed. And I told that dream to True Father, and he delayed his trip. He did not go on that trip. That day he did not use, it was either the helicopter or plane, I can't remember. But he did not use the vehicle, airborne vehicle, that day because I had a dream. And Father acknowledged that God could use dreams and revelation to protect him. That was a real experience. So, that was something that clearly, the Lord said, I'm Advent, acknowledge that dreams, just like in the Bible, just like in the Bible, Joseph said very clearly, God is giving you a message through the dream, and of course he was able to interpret it. So I think what I had during those dreams, when I asked God, I had a conscious awareness to be able to say, God, please let me know what you would like me to learn from this dream. I think God was saying, train hard, people should train hard, train in peace ninjas hard, love God, love your neighbor, etc. But at the same time, you do all that training, but make sure that when you're in public functions and stuff like that, you're vulnerable. I think that's why I was naked in the dream. I was vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? I was vulnerable. I was in a compromised situation, and somebody used that to their advantage to be able to throw acid in my freaking body. It didn't actually hit me in the face. It hit me like in the shoulder, like bam, 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 and it was like seething and burning through. And I could feel my body saying, oh, I could feel like my clenching towards it, And then I woke up, but I could feel my body like contracting as I got hit with this acid, like on my left, it was on my left shoulder. But again, you can see as I explained this dream how real it was. It was so palpably real, and I could feel my physical body actually reacting to it, etc. So, in that realm, you know, we always have to be aware. We always have to be aware. You know, spiritually aware, mentally aware, consciously aware. God can give us warnings and stimulate our amygdala and parts of our brain so that we are on more heightened alert. And those are important as we talk about security, as we talk about, you know, protecting your sovereignty and your household and having kingly duties, you know what I'm saying, and having an AR-15 and a rod of iron to be able to defend your crown and your kingdom, private property, etc. We had an interesting scholar that visited us yesterday. She was a friend of Massimo, I believe, who was another scholar, not a member of the church, but a scholar who studies comparative and new religions. And we had a very nice time with her, very nice lady. And she was saying that she actually asked us. She said she knew people, or she interviewed people in the Branch Davidians, who were killed in Waco, Texas, by the federal government. And Seventh-day Adventists, they call them Seventh-day Adventists, SDA, who also, she was saying they do a lot of hunting, and like they're only vegetarian unless they kill the animal and then they can eat the meat or something like that, etc. She asked us, like, are you worried that the FBI or federal government or like the government is watching you because you have all these pictures with guns and AR-15s and rod of irons, etc. and she said, you know, that like they're watching you, and we said everything we do, for example, number one, everything we do is public, so we don't hide anything we do. And of course, because we're in the context of America, we're able to have access to, you know, firearms, etc. But Kukja made the greater point. He said, number two, nothing is owned communally here. We're not making a compound where people are all living together in a communist style commune, just like where the Branch Davidians were. You know, this guy had like this Jesus figure in their whacked out false religion. Had like 50 wives living with him, and then he would also be sleeping with the wives of the people that were there, right? Anyways, the point is, but, you know, of course, the feds should not have come in and killed them all. That's ridiculous. I mean, that was a real clear trespass of freedom of religion, and the feds did come in and murder these people. I mean, they just murder them, and of course, the feds wanted a, quote, radical Christian group that they could use as a trope for false flags, etc., so that they, you know, it's not only Islamic radical terrorism, but they can say, oh, look at the point, there are some Christians that go wacky, etc. But the fact of the matter is that, anyways, the scholar asked us about that and said, no, we are, and Kuk Chung said explicitly explained, no, the king teaches that all brothers and sisters in sanctuary should be sovereigns. That means they should own private property. They should be the king and queen of their kingdom. Even if it's small, it doesn't matter. You're still the owner of that private property, right? And you should have the ability to defend that property, and that is sovereignty. That's what we talk about, sovereignty. It is a group, it is a nation of citizens who own the land. It's not the federal government. It's not a shadow organization, black op organization that owns the government. It's not this green belt, which they say is for the preservation of nature and conservation. When the super elites get access to that, they can frack. They can literally frack on those green belt lands. Okay, it's like ridiculous. The super elite class can do whatever the hell they want. Like in Korea, for example, they have all these growing green belts. The super elite Samsungs, all these big conglomerates, they can do whatever the heck they want on those lands. They can freaking frack oil on that land if they want. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Okay, that's what communism gets you. You get a super class that can do whatever the hell they want on those lands. And it basically becomes a private property of the super class. In any case, the point is, we do not teach communism. We do not teach living on a communal place where everything is held in common. That is political Satanism. We see that as a Satanistic system, even if it's just on a community level. So all these churches and Catholic churches are trying to create these communes and everything held in common. These are more Satanist-leaning elements. And of course, when you do those things, it becomes very wicked and evil and jealous and envious, etc. We believe in a three kingships model. We believe in fact, our Father taught us. Now, psychiatrists, psychologists, even some of the most famous, it's very sad. Camille Paglia, for example, is one of the very famous 1960s psychologists and thinkers. She was an original feminist, not a man-hating feminist. She's actually to the defense of men. She defends men all the time. But I guess she says she identifies as transgender, but she doesn't mean that she thinks she's a man. She knows she's a woman, but she had identity issues with being basically she was a tomboy when she was young. Okay, and so she says that is kind of her transgenderism. She has issues with transgenderism. But she believes she's a woman, and she doesn't believe she's a man, according to what I've been able to see, glean from her. But she's an open lesbian, so she's got some issues. But she's a libertarian, so she's not somebody who wants to use the state to force you to, teach homosexual political agenda in your schools. She doesn't like that. Or she doesn't want anybody to be forced to call her a different pronoun. She doesn't like any of that, so she's a libertarian. She has her own things, her issues, but she doesn't want to use state power to force you to be compelled to do things, okay? So in that way, she's more able type. I mean, obviously, what she's engaged in is an abomination as a lesbian, but she's more able type, if you could say that, in the fact that she doesn't want centralized state power to control you. And in the same way, for us too, in Chanigu culture and kingdom culture, we encourage all our brothers and sisters, you have to own private property. It's absolutely critical as a goal, even for young people, all you young kids, all our priests, you got to own private property. You have to be a sovereign and an owner. It's absolutely critical. It changes your whole epigenetic unlocking. And we now know through epigenetics that epigenetic changes and decisions impact not only 7 generations, up to 14 generations. Scientists are now showing that epigenetic decisions that you make now will impact your future generations for 14 generations. The Bible, there are some religions, I guess, that said 4 tribes, some Native American tribes say 7. 14 generations, according to the latest science of what we can determine your epigenetic decisions. That means the decisions you make, which change your genetics. And for example, when you do combat sports, your genetics start changing. You literally start changing because you're forced to stay in this limbo zone of fight or flight all the time, and your genes start changing like that. That's why you actually become a different person. You literally create new neural pathways, etc. For example, when my boys first got here, they were like these little, little computer little nerds. But in 3-4 years, they have physically become different. Not only because puberty, they could have gone through puberty and become these little things, little shapes, but they didn't. Because they're doing combat and they're learning epigenetic unlocking, their body's producing more testosterone, the neural pathways are being shaped, their body's creating more musculature, more mass, etc., and more, etc. So they're becoming more masculine and more manly and more male sexiness. Okay? They're developing those things, and those epigenetic unlockings actually remain with them not only through their lifetime, but it remains for 14 generations. To the most modern research, and Dr. Peterson was talking about these kind of things, that from what scientists can observe, it stays 14 generations, the epigenetics that you unlock. Isn't that incredible? That's really incredible. So all these like brain-dead leftist lunatic, Marxist-trained children who have been taught basically to always pretend that they're victims and be weak, those epigenetics of those children will remain for 14 generations of weakness. It will be 14 generations of weakness, of victimizationhood, of believing everybody else is the problem and that you're the victim all the time. This kind of, and then of course that leads to jealousy, envy, and that leads to trying to centralize a state to then steal from other people who are not even doing you any harm to steal from. So it's a very wicked thing. But the point is, throughout all this, God can use dreams. God can use dreams. And I think in that dream where I was naked and being acid thrown on me, God was saying, hey, you may be vulnerable in certain scenarios in public. You know what I'm saying? Where people are asking for your photo or something like that, you got to be aware and make sure that you are aware, and your security detail and is aware. I mean, basically, our security detail is our brothers and sisters, right? Be your brother's keeper, said God. And everybody in the sanctuary, in public functions, and everything like that, we're all our brother's keeper. We all defend ourselves, right? Defend each other. We defend ourselves, of course, but we also defend each other. And that's the whole thing about people in Malaysia. Good people, loving God and loving our neighbor. Okay? It doesn't mean we become a doormat to our neighbor. You can still disagree with your neighbor. You can still not even like the fool. But because this damn dog bites people. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to like the idiot. But when a situation of life and death may occur, you will go to the help of that neighbor. That transcends your love for your neighbor, transcends his wackiness and his stupid dog. All right, folks. It's interesting that we get a dreamscape Rima on the same day that we had a discussion, or the same, just yesterday we discussed about dreams and dreamscapes and the sort of root of, art and religion, etc. He had his whole sort of series where he's talking about art. And when you ask like a dancer, what are you doing? And like when you ask an artist, what are you doing? A singer, like, what are you doing? They just say, oh, I'm singing, I'm dancing. They don't know exactly what they're doing. But what they're doing is through that dramatization of these archetypes that are abstracted from actual individuals. They're intellectually, cognitively abstracted in abstract thinking from individuals. Then those abstract art and archetypes then become certain narratives on which literature and dramas are presented and created off of. So in some sense, some of these dramas that are created by Shakespeare are more real than even reality, because when anybody watches them, they can relate with the tragedy in the dramas. They can relate with these archetypes or archetypical aspects which are abstracted from the human experience, solidified and collated into a dramatization. And so when you watch that drama, or you watch that story, or you watch that, or you hear that music that's talking about a story, a vast array of peoples can have a almost religious experience, experiencing that, because it speaks to them. Why does it speak to them? Because it's reflecting different archetypal elements of the human experience. But these dancers and these actors, they don't know they don't necessarily know that they're doing that. You know what I mean? But they're trying to tap into these abstract, unseen, immaterial, artistic dream state-like realms, where in which they can come in contact with that. Anyways, that's a whole other discussion. The point is, God can use the dreamscape to give us revelation and to give us insight, even just to remind us, hey, be aware. Hey, be aware. God can use dreams to remind us of those things, as we see in Scripture with Joseph as well. All right, folks, we'll be right back after this. Stay with us. I'll see you on the other side.
Hi there, folks. And look at what I've got here today. My God, take a look at this. This is a BFR in 454 Casul with an octagonal barrel, magna porting, micarta grips. And look at that, it even has my initials on it, JM. Look at that thing of beauty, my God. Pop open the cartridge insertion door, and look at that cylinder spin. The finest revolvers in the world. That's a cannon. That's a cannon. Oh, man. Pretty accurate, though. Pretty much on target. Oh, boy. Massive recoil.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And we are back. Welcome back to King's Report, Monday, November 27, 2017. I am your host, Hyung Sean Moon, King of Cheongguk, broadcasting live from the Cheongguk Palace Studios. To all the kings and queens of the Kingdom of God, remember to stay in your sovereignty with your crown and your rod of iron. It is your kingly duty to love God with all your might, heart, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor, and to be prepared to defend God's immovable kingdom. Well, what's interesting about this Rima that we had today, I just want to get back to this briefly, is that there's a whole section where the chief butler speaks to Pharaoh, and also he brings in the chief baker as well. And since these dudes cannot interpret the dream that Pharaoh had, he gets pissed off and he throws them in prison. He hangs the baker. So the baker got killed because he could not answer a dream. Well, he's not. How is the baker supposed to know what the freaking Pharaoh's dream means? This poor guy was just baking bread. He was in the kitchen cooking some bread, and he got called out. Said, "What is the dream?" "I don't know. I don't know, Pharaoh." "Kill him!" It's like total. He's like, "Oh, I was just cooking bread." Oh my gosh. Oh my Lord. This shows you the nature of political Satanism, folks. This is how wicked it becomes. This is what happens when the superclass becomes the leaders. This is what happens. The pharaohs can actually kill you, and you have no recourse or no way to defend yourself. And you know, you can be baking bread and get killed. I mean, it's a huge metaphorical description of political Satanism, of what communism becomes, of what socialism becomes, and the government, what the government becomes. It becomes this wicked, tyrannical superclass oligarchy, which then rules over the population as slaves. And of course, we know that the Pharaoh had slaves. I mean, they were basically deities. And this is what happens with the whole political class. They become like literally deities. I mean, all these stupid politicians, all these politicians now where so many incredible allegations of sex and assault are now coming out against them. That's like top news right now. They're above the law. Once the government becomes so centralized that the politicians and those workers who gain political power in those governments are above the law, literally, literally meaning, I mean, they can kill people. They can kill people and get away with it. Okay? They literally become a superclass. And as they become a superclass, they become veritable gods in that civilization. And if you cross them, you basically get, assassinated. Just like what happened with Seth Rich and under Hillary Clinton. And Donna Brazile, who was the head of the DNC, Democratic National Committee worldwide, nationwide, said that she feared for her life. She feared for her life after Seth Rich was murdered. And they said it was a burglary when he got nothing stolen from him. And he was shot, well, how many times? 6 times in the back? Or whatever?
I think it was 3 times.
3 times in the back. So the guy was clearly politically murdered. There was nothing stolen from him, so it can be a burglary. And the police were involved in it because the police said it was a burglary when he had no signs of burglary. I mean, it's just so corrupt. It's so corrupt. The closer you get to D.C., the more corrupt. The further you are from D.C., the less corrupt. Or the further you are from your centralized, federal bureaucracies, the less corrupt. Your local areas and places like Pike County, they're going to be way less corrupt than state Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, federal, state government. Or when you go to Washington and the federal government. I mean, this is going to be so unbelievably corrupt as soon as you get into the radius of Washington, you're like in the vortex of Satanism. You know what I mean? The vortex epicenter of political Satanism. But this is what it gets you. Political Satanism gets you this. I mean, look at this. They can order people just dead because they're angry at them or because they can answer a stupid dream. I mean, it's like Hillary Clinton, and now Secret Service is coming out against her, how abusive she is towards Secret Service people, and how Joe Biden is groping Secret Service women. Any woman, he's grabbing their breast, grabbing the booty. You know what I'm saying? He's always after groping these people. And of course, now all these new videos of him groping little children, these people think they can get away with everything, okay? They think they're like gods, and they think they're worship. They think they're Hollywood. And like these stars believe that they're little deities, and it's like the red carpet of the Hollywood gods, the beautiful gods. It's just so pathetic and so weak and so idiotic and so herd. You know what I'm saying? It's like so herd mentality. But they have this kind of the description of what happened with Pharaoh shows what political Satanism becomes. I mean, this poor baker, this guy who's baking hot bread near an oven, I mean, stoking a fire. I mean, this guy gets killed because he couldn't answer a dream. And it wasn't even like, anyways, it's just, it shows you, and this is like the same with the Chinese emperors, okay? Or the Korean emperors, or the Korean kings, or whatever. Any of these satanic kings of the past, they behaved like this. This is how they behaved. Because they could get away with it. So this fundamental understanding of the corruptibility of humankind, and that's another principle that we have to understand in, and I'll probably talk about more on this Sunday, but this is the Christian understanding. The Christians understand the fundamental corruptibility of any human being. They do, because in the Christian method towards salvation, one must acknowledge and recognize that one is a sinner and not a sinless person, and then come to repentance before God and then be accepted by grace. You see what I'm saying? And you had this phenomena happening with even the blessed children culture. They were taught that they were special, you're special, you're special. It's like only child syndrome, right? The psychologists see only children as having lots of psychological issues and actually being mentally more weak than kids who have a lot of siblings. There's studies done, and Dr. Producer was mentioning it, studies done on women who have many brothers are actually much more capable in different arenas of life, including motherhood, but including work as well, because they don't demonize men. they have a lot of brothers who harass them and made fun of them and try to make them cry all the time. You know, that's how brothers do. You know what I mean? They just try to pick on you, and it's a natural thing. It's normal. It makes you tougher. You know what I'm saying? And girls that actually have a lot of male siblings can actually work with men. They can work with men a lot easier than girls who live alone and they were the only child and they have this what they call this special child syndrome. I guess that's called. Anyways, that's maybe colloquially what it's called, the special child syndrome. And they become weak. They become narcissistic. They become extremely self-absorbed. They become entitled, etc. And you can see this in the blessed children culture, of course, because they've followed the Han Mother to fall. They're now fallen. But in any case, you could see this in historically the blessed children culture. They believed they were so special. They believed they were taught literally that you're walking gods on the earth. And it made them neurotic. It made them psychotic. And they could not actually live up to that perfection. So many of them just fell and just left the church. Because there was so much pressure, them trying to pretend that they're perfect and faithful in order to justify the type of worship they were getting. And they ended up falling, or they ended up saying, screw this crap, or they ended up getting so anxiety-ridden by the pressure, and they left. And those who stayed, you could see the ones who stayed, ironically, were so entitled and believed like they were so righteous, and they could not sin, and they were just like, they were like freaking Pharisees. Because they had this only child, special child syndrome. And it's the worst thing that the education coming from the Korean leaders did to the young people. It is absolutely the most devastatingly nefarious, evil thing that they did to blessed children. They just praised them all the time and made them believe that they were so special and beyond sin. When that's not even the principle. The principle teaches you that you can commit a lot of individual sin. You may not have original sin, but you have tons of individual sin. And because blessed children were never taught that, they actually thought they transcended sin. They literally thought that they were perfect beings on earth. It's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And I remember it was like, it's the second gen's time now. It's our time now. No, it's not, you pieces of crap. It's always God's time, you dumb idiots. You know what I'm saying? It was like, what the hell? I mean, this is like an ego trip on steroids. Trying to get resources. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you people? You know what I mean? But they were really told lies by their parents, by the establishment and the church. Father never would tell them they're perfect. Never. He would always chastise them. I mean, what the hell? I mean, these stupid, anyways, it just damages anybody's psychology to be told that they're perfect and beyond sin. My God. I mean, it's like, even a normal person who's not even religious knows that they're not perfect. I mean, if you have to live up to this perfect, fake, vision of yourself, you're gonna go crazy. You know what I mean? And that's what I think is, and that's what, of course, so powerful about Christianity, is that it recognizes that everybody's a sinner before God and that we're imperfect before God, and it's God's love, it's God's goodness. It's God who brings perfection into our life. It's God who, when he comes into us, builds us into more perfect beings, okay? And as we get sanctified, we become more perfect, okay? But it's not of our own doing. It's not coming from us. We are actually very malevolent. We're actually very self-centered. We're actually very selfish as human beings. You know what I'm saying? And so that is so critical because that is the fundamental nature of Christian civilization, is this understanding that we are corruptible. It's understanding the corruptibility of humanity, and that's why you don't trust anybody with absolute power, right? This is the whole the nature of the U.S. Constitution and Western constitutions, is that you can't trust anybody with full absolute power, right? And that you have balances of power. I mean, the whole Western world is built upon this notion of the corruptibility of man, right? And this comes from Christianity. It doesn't come from Buddhism, because Buddhism believes you can be perfect through meditation. It doesn't come from Hinduism, because Hinduism also believes you can become God. It doesn't come from Islam, obviously, because Islam has a Sharia law which creates a caliphate. It doesn't come from any other pagan ideology, because most pagan ideologies had like a pharaoh type of god king structure. So it just doesn't come from any of those pagan ideologies. It comes from fundamentally from the spread of Christianity and the takeover of Europe by Christianity, which was a Middle Eastern religion that eventually took over Europe. And that's where you get that combination of that Christian foundational framework of meaning and the corruptibility of man that gets combined with common law. You know what I'm saying? So and Aristotelian thought. So this is like really, this is important for us to understand that the fundamental nature of Christianity sees the human person as inherently fallen, fallen away from God and inherently corruptible, okay? And even in a perfected state, because Adam and Eve were not at perfection, but they were in an idyllic state. Oh, and it's interesting even about the garden, and we didn't get into this yesterday, but the garden itself represents both civilization and both the wilderness, right? It's like the midway between the wilderness and civilization, right? So it's surrounded, it has a gate, but also it has a lot of vegetation, it has a lot of wilderness in it. There's snakes also that roam it. So it's like this midway point between civilization and humanity and the wild other, or the wild predators, Isn't that interesting? But the point is, Christianity fundamentally believes in the corruptibility of man. And so that nobody can be God. And that's why the Chinese Constitution, for example, has that built within it and has inherently within it because it's framed in a Judeo-Christian framework. That's why it has the most balance of power of any constitution on the planet. Okay? Because even the king, and people ask, oh, well, what if the kings get corrupt in the future? Well, the kings don't have absolute power. That's what if. Okay? So that solves the what if. What if the kings get corrupt? Well, the king doesn't have absolute power, so he's not going to screw up the country. You know what I'm saying? And there's consequences to people trying to organize for absolute power, because you have a peace police militia and you have a completely armed, racked, locked and loaded civilian class, civilian population. You know what I'm saying? So you have a scenario, but where does that all come from? Where does this distrust for humans getting power come from? It comes from Christianity. Christianity is what produces the fundamental distrust for political power in the hands of human beings, absolute power in the hands of human beings. Because it teaches the fundamental corruptibility of man, that even in an idyllic state, man can fall. Woman as well. Women can also be corruptible as well. When I say man, I mean man and woman. And of course, women are easier to corrupt in certain things, and that's why the devil chooses them to corrupt them through, bribery or power or things like that. Because women just generally, because they are more dependent, microevolutionarily speaking, because when you're pregnant, you have to be dependent on the male to get your resources. You have to. I mean, it's just physical. It's a physical necessity. You cannot be hunting. You're going to be a terrible hunter at 9 months pregnant, trying to feed your body, trying to give nourishment to your child. You got to eat every day, You know what I'm saying? So women, because they're more dependent, they're easier to tempt to marry the state, basically ally with the state, to steal resources to give to them, So that's why not only dictators target women and the women vote, but of course Satan also targeted Eve as a woman as well. So women can be corrupted in other realms easier. Men can be corrupted sexually very easy. Women are harder to corrupt sexually, I would say, unless it becomes a totally hedonistic, sexualized, pagan type of culture, which then they become loose and they become sluts. So they're easy to corrupt then sexually at that point. But if you have a general, because Adam and Eve had God, right? So let's say they're in a Judeo-Christian framework. Right, because they have God, so they're in a Judeo-Christian framework where they know they have to obey their father. But in that state, Eve is easier to corrupt through power. Adam is easier to corrupt through sex. And those are the weaknesses of men and women. The weakness of women is the lust for power. The weakness for man is the lust for sex. And they will fight to get power for the women that they love. to get the women, right? Men will want to collect resources. Men want to get power, not necessarily for power. They want resources because resources gets the girl, gets the hot girl. Right? In any case, the point is, this is what happens with political Satanism. It becomes like this. Totally evil, totally wicked. This is the fruit. This is the fruit, okay? But Christianity has a fundamental wisdom that sees the corruptibility of man. And so that's why when it creates law and governance, it does not, never trusts one person with all the power. Even the Trinity Constitution does not trust the king of all the kings, with absolute power. Isn't that interesting? You see that? See that? So we are made in the image of God, but we are not perfect like God is perfect. That's why we have to have faith and love him and pray, and we have to try to become like him and train, etc., so that we can be forged by him and, like the potter's hand, be shaped into the vessel that gives him joy and glory. All right, folks, we'll be right back after this. Stay with us.
When the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. And when the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. Let the king of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. You are good. Good, oh, you are good, good, oh, you are good, good, oh, you are good, good, oh. to me. God is holding on. And when the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. Let the king of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. You are good. Good, oh, you are good, good, oh, you are good, good, oh, you are good, good, oh. Let the king of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, yes, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, Monday, November 27th, 2017. Second King reporting live from the Cheongguk Palace. To all the kings and queens of the Kingdom of God, good morning today. It is now 6:09 a.m. On top news on Breitbart.com today, court documents Roy Moore accuser has violent nature. History of criminal fraud against own family. Court documents related to Tina Johnson, an Alabama woman who claims that Republican senatorial candidate Roy Moore groped her in his office decades ago, may raise questions about Johnson's motives in making the accusation. The documents reviewed by Breitbart News show that Moore represented Johnson's mother in a nasty custody case for Johnson's then 12-year-old son. Daniel Sitz. So I guess that would be her brother, right? Or her half-brother, whatever it is. Moore represented Tina Johnson's mother in a nasty custody case for Johnson's then 12-year-old, for Johnson's then 12-year-old son. So there was a custody case with her and her mother for her son. So the grandma.
Yeah, the mother's grandchild.
The grandma and the mom. Okay. Daniel Sitz. In the case, Johnson was repeatedly painted by Moore's client as an unfit, absent, and unstable mother and was accused of taking her son from his elementary school against his will. Johnson's mother was ultimately awarded custody in the case. One affidavit signed by Johnson's mother while she was represented by Moore accused Johnson of having a violent nature and noted that she has been treated by a psychiatrist when she was approximately 15 years of age. Johnson was a teenage mother. Separate criminal documents show that as late as 2010, Johnson was arrested and pled guilty to felony fraud charges related to checks belonging to a family member. She also entered a court drug program. Speaking to Al.com, Johnson first went public with the claim that Moore groped her when she was on legal business with her mother in 1991. The website noted that Johnson reached out to Al.com to discuss her alleged experience with Moore. The website related that Johnson was at the office to sign over custody of her 12-year-old son to her mother, with whom he'd been living. Johnson claimed that after the two met with Moore, her mother walked out of the office door first, and that as Johnson was walking out, Moore grabbed her buttocks from behind. He didn't pinch it, he grabbed it, she says. Johnson claimed that she was so surprised by Moore's alleged actions that she didn't mention anything to her mother, even though Johnson described her mother as sitting next to her in Moore's office just before the alleged incident. Johnson's mother, Mary Catherine Cofield, had hired Moore, then a private attorney, to represent her in the custody case for Johnson's son, Daniel sits. The custody documents filed by Moore refer to Johnson by her married name at the time, Tina Sitz. Al.com reported that it located the court documents from 1991 detailing the custody transfer. The website did not report on the nastiness of the soap opera-like custody case, or that Moore's client filed numerous court documents with allegations against Johnson. In one affidavit, Cofield stated that Johnson has a violent nature and has been treated by a psychiatrist when she was approximately 15 years of age. Another document signed by Moore stated that Cofield and not Johnson was the most fit and proper person to have custody of Daniel Sitz. Johnson's son had resided with his grandmother, Cofield, since he was 9 months old. Cofield says that during those years, she provided Daniel with food, clothing, shelter, without any assistance from Johnson. A judge officially granted Cofield full custody on September 23, 1991. In the custody documents, Johnson is accused of taking her son against his will. A September 11, 1991 affidavit signed by Daniel says that 2 days earlier, Johnson took him from elementary school against my will and made me go to her home. An affidavit signed by Johnson's mother claimed that Johnson took Daniel from the school forcibly without my permission. Immediately after the school incident documented by Moore's office, Cofield was granted temporary custody of Daniel until September 23rd, hearing at which she received permanent custody. Daniel stated that he wants to live with my grandmother, with whom I have lived as long as I can remember. The L.com article, meanwhile, mentioned in one sentence in the 18th paragraph of its story that Johnson has pled guilty to writing bad checks and for third-degree theft of property, which she said stemmed from family disagreements over the care of her late stepfather. Criminal and court records reviewed by Breitbart News find that she was arrested on February 25, 2010 for the felony charge of criminal possession of a forged instrument and theft by deception. She spent 1 day in jail and was released on bond. The case resolved around the charges of intent to defraud, possess, or utter checks in the amounts of $288, $129, $259, $300, and $170, respectively. She was also charged with obtaining or exerting unauthorized control over 5 checks for $25 each, with intent to deprive the owner of said property. 5 checks were in the name of W.G. Cofield, ostensibly her late stepfather. Cofield personally appeared to file charges against Johnson, criminal records show. Wow, so she just got a screwed up whole family life, my goodness. Johnson claims that Moore groped her in 1991 at his private law practice on 3rd Street in Gadsden, Alabama. Last week, Breitbart News interviewed Delbra Adams, Moore's former longtime secretary and judicial assistant. Adams said that in her 13 years of working for Moore, she never saw or experienced any inappropriate conduct towards women. Adams worked for Moore in 1991 at the time of Johnson's accusations. Adams' desk was right outside his office door at the time. Adams' name was signed as a notary on one of the custody documents filed in Johnson's case on behalf of Johnson's mother, Cofield. Numerous attempts to reach Johnson for comment were unsuccessful. Moore has strenuously denied the numerous accusations against him. And there you go.
It's really hard to tell what's going to happen there. The voting day is 2 weeks from tomorrow. Breitbart is quoting a poll saying that Moore is 7 points ahead. Those who don't want Moore to win are saying that the race is tight. which means that maybe he's sort of 2 or 3 or 4 points ahead. I think we see that President Trump is coming out critical of the Democratic candidate, but not really enthusiastic about Moore either. So maybe he's hedging his bets. So maybe he has information that Moore has a pretty good chance of winning. Certainly, if he wins, it'll be a huge victory for Bannon, Stephen Bannon, and a huge defeat
The
for
Trump
the
agenda, yeah.
a huge defeat for the Democratic or Republican establishment. I think it'd be a huge victory for Bannon more than Trump, actually, because Trump is pretty lukewarm on him.
He wasn't even supporting him in the beginning. But look at this, ABC's Cokie Roberts. Is that how you say Cokie Roberts?
Yes, yes.
With Trump's endorsement, it's going to be very hard to defeat Roy Moore. So even the liberal lunatics believe that he's going to be hard to beat.
And they've talked about not seating him, but calmer heads have said that that's legally pretty impossible. Back in the 60s, there was a congressman named Adam Clayton Powell who was involved in all sorts of, or accused and convicted, I think, of corruption. But eventually the Supreme Court said, hey, if this information is available to the voters at the time of the election and they still vote him in, if he still wins the election, then that's basically the voters are saying, this is the guy we want and you have to seat him.
And we don't believe what you're saying.
Right.
All right, folks, here you go. In other news, House Intelligence Committee trying to find out why Fusion GPS paid journalists who reported on Russia. Recently filed court documents revealed that Fusion GPS, the firm that produced the Trump dossier, paid 3 journalists who reported on Russia issues, and the House Intelligence Committee is trying to find out why. The payments to journalists occurred between June 2016 and February 2017 and raised questions as to whether the firm paid journalists in connection with its efforts to advance the narrative that Trump campaign colluded with Russia. And now, of course, they can't find crap on that. The payments were revealed in court filings by the Deputy General Counsel for the House Intelligence Committee on November 21st to the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia to request more information from Fusion GPS's bank about payments. The filings were obtained by Breitbart News. The committee is requesting 112 more relevant transactions, including the payments to the 3 journalists and or researchers. The committee is aware that Fusion GPS specialty is seeding its opposition research into news stories, the documents say. Given the clear relevance of journalists and researchers to Fusion GPS's activities, to relevance to the committee's investigation, the requested records therefore include records related to 9 payments to 3 additional journalists and or researchers who reported or written on matters within the scope of the committee's investigation. Getting to the bottom of who paid Fusion GPS for work on the dossier, as well as whom Fusion GPS paid in relation to the dossier as part of the House Intelligence Committee's investigation into Russian interference in the election. The House Committee has begun to zero in on the dossier to find out what role it played in the FBI's investigation into whether there were any Russian collusion with Trump campaign. They can find anything. In fact, what they found is that Hillary Clinton, through Uranium One, was colluding with Russia and making huge deals with it against our national security interests, giving them 20% of our uranium. That is crazy, which of course is then used to make nuclear weapons, not just nuclear power, nuclear weapons. In total, Perkins Coie paid Fusion GPS over $1 million in what appears to be one of the firm's most lucrative contracts and most redacted bank records turned over to the committee. After Perkins Coie, this is a law firm, Perkins Coie, Hillary Clinton campaign Democratic National Committee paid for the dossier through its lawyer, Mark Elias's law firm, Perkins Coie. After Perkins Coie hired Fusion GPS hired ex-British spy Christopher Steele to work on the dossier. The dossier was reportedly used by the FBI to launch its investigation and obtain a surveillance warrant on a Trump campaign member despite making salacious and unverified claims. Steele told Mother Jones he went to the FBI in early 2016, July of 2016, and former FBI Director James Comey told the House Intelligence Committee that they launched their investigation late July 2016. The filing includes one case where Fusion GPS successfully got the contents of the dossier into the news media. In fall 2016, Fusion GPS directed Steele to meet with major media outlets, including Yahoo News. On September 23, 2016, Yahoo News reported one of the dossier's unverified claims attributing to a single well-placed Western intelligence source. That claim alleged a former Trump campaign volunteer, foreign policy advisor Carter Page, met with two high-ranking Russian officials in July of 2016. Page testified this month under oath that he claimed was untrue. He has sued Yahoo for defamation. Fusion GPS has asked the court to issue a restraining order against the House committee, according to the Washington Examiner. The firm is denying that payments to the journalists are pertinent to its work related to Russia or President Trump. It said that payments were made to help the company with research. So then release them. Fusion GPS is a research firm set up by former investigative journalists. Fusion GPS's lawyer, Josh Levy, said in a statement to the Examiner, as such, it sometimes works with contractors that have specialized skills seeking public information. Contractors are not permitted to publish any articles based on that work, and Fusion GPS does not pay journalists to write stories. Levy told the Examiner that payments were not aimed at getting anti-Trump stories into the press. This is simply another desperate attempt by the president's political allies to discredit Fusion GPS's work and divert attention. Yeah. And there you go, folks. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. Stay with us.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Hi, I'm Joby Gorgas with Magnum Research. I'm here to tell you a little bit about our new L5 and 44 mag. This is our 5-inch model, lightweight model. It's got an aluminum grip frame, shaving down the weight so that we can get it under 50 ounces so that it's New York legal. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to properly hold the L5 for function. When shooting a Desert Eagle, you want to make sure that your dominant arm is locked out, pushing back into the back of the grip. Your secondary hand is holding around the front of the grip to keep the muzzle flip down. This gives you a good firm hold for proper cycling. We got to remember that the Desert Eagle is a gas-operated rotating bolt semi-automatic pistol, not unlike an AR system. I also want to talk to you about the stance for shooting the Desert Eagle. When shooting the Desert Eagle, you need a good firm base, so you want to step into your direction, get that arm locked, that support hand on, and lean forward into it so that you can handle that recoil.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And we are back. Welcome back to the Geeks Report, Monday, November 27, 2017. Let's now go to Tim, the Agent Elder, for an important report. Tim.
I have an article in a newspaper that's published in India, before we read it, we need to understand that India and China are rivals, and they don't really get along too well. And also India is not so friendly towards the U.S. either. China has traditionally rejected U.S.-style interventionism, this article says, but its deepening economic involvement in volatile countries like Myanmar and Zimbabwe is thrusting Beijing towards a more assertive global role, analysts say. China's foreign policy has been guided by its principle of non-interference in other countries' internal affairs, which emerged in 1954 when it was a much weaker nation. While Beijing remains rhetorically committed to the stance, it is now a very different power, boasting the world's largest standing army and the second biggest economy. This change has coincided with a shift in diplomatic engagement that most recently saw Beijing take the unusual step of proposing a strategy to resolve the crisis over Muslim refugees flooding over the border from Myanmar into Bangladesh. It has also stepped up its role in the Middle East, on which it depends for oil, after having taken a back seat in the Powder Keg region, offering to host talks on the Syrian and the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts. China is now expected to take greater responsibility in world affairs as, quote, it's no longer the little underdog, says Kerry Brown, director of the Lao-China Institute at King's College London. You can't have an elephant pretending it's a mouse. That's Kerry Brown saying that. China's footprint abroad is growing with its One Belt, One Road infrastructure project with $1 trillion in investment across Asia and Europe to revive ancient trade routes through a massive rail and maritime network. As the scope of Beijing's foreign interests extend, quote, naturally, the question of how to safeguard those interests also comes up, unquote, says Chinese political commentator Chen Daoyin. President Xi Jinping presented an ambitious goal of turning China into a global superpower with a first-rate army during a Communist Party Congress last month that further consolidated his power. Chen noted that Xi vowed to uphold the international order, implying a much more active role, increasingly similar to that of the U.S., which China has decried as overly meddlesome. Though China would not publicly disavow its non-interventionist approach, it would likely, quote, gradually dilute it so that it evolves from a non-interference to neutrality to interference, unquote, Chen said. When China's national interests are harmed abroad, it's entirely possible that it could use the need to protect its investments in diaspora citizens as an excuse to deploy troops, unquote. Beijing has been flexing its military muscle, opening its first overseas military base in Djibouti in August and building militarized islands on the disputed South China Sea. Yet, even without direct military intervention, China has found itself embroiled in politics abroad despite its wish to remain an amoral political force. Zimbabwe's army chief, General Constantine Chiwenga, happened to be on an official visit to Beijing days before his forces took over the country, sparking speculation that Beijing had some role in the decision. China had a long-running relationship with Robert Mugabe, that's the former now president of Zimbabwe, and has significant investments to protect in the country. Brown said he was skeptical of such rumors, but they demonstrate the impossibility of not taking sides as a superpower. Quote, if people attribute power to you, you have it. You have influence, he said. The comfortable fence sitting is then not very sustainable. In Cambodia, China is the largest source of foreign direct investment, having pumped in a total of $11.2 billion by the end of 2016. The poverty-stricken country's dependence on Chinese money emboldened its Prime Minister Hun Sen to make political moves that erode democracy and democratic processes, said Brian Eiler, director of the Southeast Asia program at the Stimson Center, a U.S.-based think tank. Quote, as long as China continues to hold economic sway over Cambodia, Cambodia will remain authoritarian without an opposition party, unquote. Myanmar has faced global outrage over a military crackdown on minority Rohingya Muslims in Rakhine State that the UN has called ethnic cleansing. But its government has been seen unflinching support from China, which has invested billions on ports, gas, and oil in Rakhine, including a $2.45 billion pipeline that opened in April. Earlier this month, strong Chinese opposition forced the UN Security Council to drop plans to adopt a resolution demanding an end to the violence. Indeed, Beijing has presented its own proposal to resolve the crisis with a ceasefire, refugee repatriation, and poverty alleviation. Everything seems to have a link with China now, whether it's Zimbabwe or Burma or Sri Lanka or political issues in New Zealand. It's an extraordinary change, Brown said, using another name for Myanmar. The idea of non-intervention has sort of become impossible because even if China wants to sit in glorious isolation, problems will now come and find it. So this article is following up on Xi Jinping's speech to the 19th Party Congress of the Chinese Communist Party last month, showing that China is now a very different nation and intends to become, Xi Jinping said, a global superpower, and I would even say the preeminent global superpower by 2050 is his goal. And he has a plan to do it, and he's executing it, and we need to be aware of it and watch out for it.
They are definitely trying to move up the ladder and supplant and replace the U.S. and the able type Christian, Judeo-Christian culture, which America has thrown away to become more secularized, throwing away its foundational elements. China, of course, having none of those foundational elements, and their civilization built upon might equals right, or power politics, or the deadly combination of imperialist, emperor, historical dynasties. I mean, just terrible, 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 Pharaoh-like, totalitarianism there. And of course, China is not only a massive violator of human rights, but in the last century has murdered over 77, close to probably 80 million of its own people. So a very, very dangerous, dangerous country that, of course, is ramping up its military power, investments, etc., and trying to become the new leader of the world, which, of course, will not be then a free world. It will become a totalitarian world. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. Stay with us.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Boy, wasn't that fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially. It's just absolutely gorgeous.
All polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1,000,000.
Yeah. Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah. Just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah. Model
But
27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run. Under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right. 341.
I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about, 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum, but it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So
That sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
At break of
We are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, Monday, November 27, 2017. In other top news, Huffington Post contributor defends Al Franken. Leanne tweeting was asking for it. She was asking to have her breast groped while she was sleeping, I guess, because it's Senator Al Franken. I guess she's really asking her when she's snoring and sleeping to have her breast groped by a man she does not know. Look at these intolerant liberals who are attacking a woman who's been sexually assaulted by a perverted man pretending to be a comedian. Okay, and because he's a Democratic senator, they want to come to his defense, and even though they say that all women who are assaulted should be listened to, they are not listening to Leon Tweeden. Left-wing activist and HuffPost contributor G.S. Potter has declared that Leon Tweeden, the Los Angeles journalist who was first to accuse Al Franken, senator of Minnesota, of sexual misconduct, has not earned the right to claim that she is a victim. What a trash bag. She writes, what Leanne Tweeden has done is stolen the very real traumas of very real survivors, people like me, and mocked them. What she has done is take our pain and our bravery and our strength and exploit it on behalf of a network of people that actively prey on the women and children she is pretending to show solidarity with. What she's doing is violent, is disgusting, and is dangerous on every personal and political level associated with sexual assault in the U.S. Well, see, the problem with this little liberal lunatic is that there is a picture of Al Franken grabbing her breasts while she's sleeping, as if it's a big joke. Now, if that happened to this woman, this Potter idiot, I'm sure she would say that that was sexual assault. If an unknown man comes and is fondling your breast while you're sleeping, that would be sexual assault.
Definitely.
Give me a freaking break. What a low-life piece of trash. Perhaps if she was, in fact, a survivor of sexual assault, she says, she would understand the damages that is being caused by her actions. But she is not a survivor, and she is definitely not a victim of Al Franken. Leanne was never raped, she was never assaulted, she was never a victim of sexual violence or harassment. Really? Is that right? We have a picture to show it. Is that right? She was a willing and active participant in a comedy show that involved sexualized behaviors. Okay, so does that mean any woman who's involved in a comedy skit should expect to get their breasts and bum and tongues thrown down their throat? I guess that's what every comedian has to expect when they do a comedy skit, Tim. That's what she's saying. What a total lunatic. She consented to participate. She didn't consent to have a tongue rammed down her throat. And she didn't consent to, while she was sleeping, have her breasts being groped. What the fuss is wrong with these idiots? I mean, these people are crazy. She actively engaged in and invited similar behaviors. Oh, where's your compassion to women, huh? While insisting that Tweeden is not a victim, Dr. Potter says a very large part of me wishes she has been basically assaulted, though. What a trash bag. I mean, this is why people don't respect a stupid doctor anymore. Because you have idiots and brain-dead lunatics like this Potter. Tweeden's claims happen to hurt Democrats, therefore, apparently, they are not to be believed. And just as only Democrats can be victims, only Democrats are entitled to the presumption of innocence when accused, a point underlined by House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi on Sunday when she accused Alabama Republican U.S. Senate nominee Roy Moore of being a child molester, but insisted Representative John Conyers, of a Democrat, deserved due process. There you go, showing the total hypocrisy of the Pharisees of the Democratic Party. When it's a Republican, she calls him a child molester, even though there's no proof. When it's a Democrat, she says they deserve due process. This is why you can't argue with the liberal lunatics. They're not rational, do you understand? They are completely a power cult. They are a cult that is craving for power. That's all they are. They are literally a neo-Marxist power cult. They're just insane. They're crazy insane. Everybody deserves due process. But when you have pictures of this idiot groping a woman who's sleeping, you're in big trouble. You know what I'm saying? You are in big trouble. I mean, this is just, it's so ridiculous. So absurd. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, people should all have their day in court. You can't just say Roy Moore is a child molester while Kanye should get a day in court. Again, showing the utter hypocrisy of the liberal lunatics. Internet sales boom, 5 billion, Black Friday record. Christmas season shopping exploded to a record $5 billion in online sales this Black Friday, showing that the internet is still growing as a major artery of commerce nationwide. The $5 billion raked in over a 24-hour Black Friday shopping day is 16.9% increase over last year's sale during the day, according to CNN Money. Online giant Amazon claims sales rolled in at record levels and reports that more than 200,000 toys were sold in just 5 hours. But with good news for bricks and mortar outlets, estimates from Shopper Track show that traffic in stores was only down slightly over last year. The industry tracker said foot traffic in stores decreased less than 1% when compared to Black Friday 2016. Foot traffic was down only 2% over the last year for both the Thanksgiving Day and Black Friday shopping days. But Shopper Track's Brian Field also notes that fewer stores opted to open on Thanksgiving Day this year. Shopper Track is not the only group touting this year's booming sales. Adobe Analytics also reported booming sales with $5.03 billion haul over Black Friday, CNET reported. Adobe also noted that Thanksgiving Day shopping saw a big jump with a 18% over 2016's $1.3 billion. In other news, week 12, empty seats greatly outnumber fans as NFL treats shrinking number of spectators to protest fights and bad football. Look at that. Good. Boycott the stupid NFL. More than a dozen NFL players went back to protesting against the country in the first NFL action since the Thanksgiving holiday. Not surprising, when the protests continue, fans continue to leave thousands of empty seats in stadiums across the league. Good. Good, good, good. So you can see those empty seats. A lot of empty seats in crowds here. Lots of empty seats at the Colts game. Late arriving crowd. LOL. Empty seats galore, Pix reports. I mean, they still got people there, but there are empty seats down here. And of course around here, there's a smattering of people. New Jersey Panthers, oh yeah, a lot of empty seats over here. Oh yeah, oh, a lot down here. A lot down here. You can't have things that say salute to service and have the stupid players not standing in the American flag of which those veterans and patriots are fighting for. Oh, there's a big one. Look at this. You can really see. That's really empty. Look at that. They're going to lose so much money. That's fantastic. NFL should be punished for their stupid, idiotic actions. Oh, wow. Good, good. Oh, wow. That's excellent. Excellent.
I think they get even more money from
advertising.
And from TV rights.
And for TV, yeah.
Right. So I think it's more important not to watch it.
Any way you can to hurt their cash flow is a good thing with these stupid NFL, which won't control the behavior of their idiotic friends, their players. Look, if they want to say whatever they want on Twitter or something like that, let them do that. But for Christ's sake, before a stupid game, politicizing a stupid game, give me a break. Play the damn game, show the respect for the country, and play the damn game. Then you won't have people leaving you like idiots. I mean, this is how stupid they are. Iran warns Europe it will increase missile range if threatened. Tel Aviv, a senior Iran general warned Saturday that Tehran will increase its missile range beyond 2,000 kilometers if Europe threatens it in any way. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Holy
Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And we are back. Welcome back to the Games for Monday, November 27, 2017. Second King reporting live from the Cheonggyeong Palace Studios. And in other top news, Pelosi defends Clinton, Conyers, Franken, attacks Trump, calls Moore a child molester, but Conyers is kicked to the curb, steps down from judiciary post amid sexual misconduct controversy. There he is. John Conyers stepped down. And on Sunday, he will be stepping down as ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. The move comes after it surfaced that he had paid a former staffer a settlement after she claimed she was fired for rebuffing Conyers' sexual advances. After careful consideration and in light of the attention drawn by recent allegations made against me, I have notified the Democratic leader of my request to step aside as ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. I deny these allegations. Many of them were raised by documents reported paid for by a partisan alt-right blogger. I very much look forward to vindicating myself and my family before the House Committee on Ethics. Politico reported on Conyers' departure from the post, which she has held since 1965. Golly, there's got to be a limit on these stupid politicians being in power.
The Cheonggyeong Constitution gives a 12-year limit to.
Golly, I mean, these idiots are there forever. They're like literally from cradle to grave. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. He's been there from 1965 when the hippies were running around. Holy crash, give me a break. Oh my Lord, that is absolutely ridiculous. Oh my gosh. These idiots have to be kicked out of their stupid political jobs after 12 years. BuzzFeed broke the story last week with Conyers' office had Conyers' office had paid and accused her $27,000 to settle a complaint that she had been fired after refusing his sexual advances. The settlement using taxpayer funds. What the fuss is this thing is ridiculous. How do these idiots pay $27,000 to this woman using your freaking money? When they're the ones who are alleged, they're the ones settling. What kind of screwed up, ridiculous, crony, ridiculous, corrupt system do we have? America is no longer America. This just confirms it. We have a complete permanent overclass. I mean, how can you pay $27,000 of my freaking taxpayer money and your taxpayer money to settle these idiotic cases by these stupid politicians? Why aren't they paying for their own freaking money? Seriously, how the hell is it that they get to use taxpayer money to pay for this stuff? How are they not paying for themselves? I mean, this is like, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Oh my gosh, ridiculous. The settlement using taxpayer funds was reached out of the formal reporting mechanism for sexual harassment claims, the Office of Compliance. As Breitbart News reported, the office released a report that showed between fiscal year 1997 and 2017, some 17 million had been handed out as settlements to individuals or groups of individuals who find a variety of charges against members of Congress or staff, including sexual harassment claims. Oh, golly, it's ridiculous. All right, that's just, it's so ridiculous. It's absurd. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Let's find out who the others are.
That's true. Let's find out who they are. Morrissey, who the hell is this idiot? I'd kill Donald Trump for the safety of humanity. Who the hell are you, you freaking white supremacist loser? British musician Morrissey says if given the chance, he'd kill President Trump to ensure the safety of humanity. He's an old, has-been, failed, idiot guitar player, whoever the hell he is. You're a failure, you piece of trash. And you're saying you're going to kill a duly elected president of the United States of America, basically the world? I mean, you piece of trash, idiot, white supremacist bigot. The 58-year-old former Smith frontman said in an interview with Der Spiegel this week that if he was presented with a button that could instantly kill Trump, he wouldn't hesitate to press it. I would push it for the safety of humanity, he said. It has nothing to do with my personal opinion or his face or his family, but in the interest of humanity, I would push. The singer also explained that it was media who so derided Trump during the 2016 campaign that ultimately created Trump, ensured consistent coverage of his campaign, and led to the victory over Hillary Clinton.
Other quotes by Morrissey: long hair is an unpardonable offense which should be punishable by death. So maybe it's his hair, maybe it's Trump's hair that makes him punishable by death.
Oh my gosh, look at this idiot Morrissey. Who is this piece of trash, man? Nobody knows who you are, you stupid idiot. I mean, he's saying death to the President of the United States. This guy should, I mean, that's ridiculous. The American media helped Trump, yes, that first created him. He explained according to a translation of the interview by the Washington Times. Why would you have to oh, Der Spiegel, I see, it's in German. Whether they criticize him or laugh at him, he doesn't care. He just wants to see his picture and his name. The American media have shot themselves in the leg. Morrissey added that he never expected Trump to be elected president, and he has no faith in political establishment anymore. He grabs after everything like a little child. He's not a leader. He's a vermin.
He also defends Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey.
There you go. Shows you where he's at.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's not such a serious character.
What a total bozo piece of crap. Give me a freaking break. Hospital probes nurse who said white women's sons must be sacrificed to wolves. Quote, every white woman raises a detriment to society when they raise a son. These people are crazy. I'm serious. They're freaking psychopathic, pathologically insane. Not only is she racist, she's saying all sons, all white peoples, all white boys should be murdered. What the? I mean, how do these people get away with this? These people are the most racist, broad brush stroking, I mean, just bigots in the world. Golly, I mean, jeez. And she's a freaking nurse? I guess she has a little bit of a bias against white people, it looks like, and against white boys. I mean, whoa. The post in question states every white woman raises a detriment to society when they raise a son. It goes on to say the sons of white women should be sacrificed to wolves. What? Every white woman raises a detriment to society when they raise a white son. Someone with the highest propensity to be a terrorist, rapist, racist, killer, and domestic violence all-star. Historically, every son you had should be sacrificed to the wolves. She said, historically, every son you had So not only is she there for killing white people, but also all sons. You should be sacrificed to the wolves. I mean, look at this piece of trash. What a low-life scumbag. Are you kidding? White boys are the highest propensity to be terrorists? What the hell planet is she living on? What the hell planet is this woman living on? She's smoking crack, apparently. I mean, what the hell planet is she living on? Are you kidding me? Islamic terrorists have the highest propensity to be terrorists and to kill people in the name of their religion and evoke terror. What the hell is she talking about? Mass shootings are statistical 0 in terms of homicide. What the hell is she talking about? Almost all of the terrorist attacks, 30,000 of which have been carried out since 9/11, all of them have been Islamic terrorists, jihadis. What the hell is she talking about? This woman is completely deluded. She doesn't know what freaking planet she inhabits. Golly, this is crazy. And she's a freaking nurse where you have to put your life in her hands? Warning to white people, don't go to this hospital.
Well, I think she's no longer with that hospital. She's no longer, which makes it even more dangerous. Now we don't know where she is. So check.
Talk about a freaking terrorist, my gosh.
If you're going to go to
She's saying kill all white people, throw them to the sons, throw your sons to the wolves. Historically, she's saying you should throw your sons to the wolves. What in the hell is this woman on? What a pathological psychopath. She's saying throw little innocent babies to wolves. I mean, what the hell are these people? These people are supremely sick. They are sick, sick, sick. Oh my gosh. WAPO columnist special place in hell for Kellyanne Conway. This is coming from WAPO columnist who probably doesn't even believe in God or hell. Look at this idiot, idiot, idiot. Jennifer Rubin, opinion writer, opinion politician, political activist, posing as a journalist for the WAPO owned by Amazon's Bezos, who creates a machine called Alexa, who says Jesus Christ is a fictional character. What the hell? I mean, give me a freaking break. On Saturday's AM Joy, Washington Post columnist and frequent MSNBC guest Jennifer Rubin was near breaking her own record for aiming vitriol at Republicans as she declared that there is a special place in hell for Kellyanne Conway because a White House advisor recently advocated voting for Roy Moore in spite of sexual molestation accusations against the Alabama Republican. Also, another MSNBC guest, Republicans are domestic terrorists. There you go. There you go. That's the planet they live on. Republicans are domestic terrorists. Also accuses GOP of being pro-Putin and pro-pedophilia when it's all these Democrats being tried and now investigated for, in Hollywood, as being pedophiles. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Incredibly inflammatory. Wow. During a segment on Saturday's broadcast, MSNBC AM Joy, the liberal network, allowed a Democratic pollster to call for his political enemies to be arrested and put in prison for failing to adhere to a variety of left-wing viewpoints. The pollster, Fernand Amandi, made the comments during a discussion about what liberals see as Republican members refusing to push for a children's health insurance program. Amandi also conflated the issue with actual left-wing causes like a psychotic fear of Russia and the 100% belief that Senate candidate Roy Moore is guilty of numerous accusations without any proof. Rather than actually discuss the issue, Amandi instead opted for a straw man attack using multiple flat-out lies to declare the entire Republican Party as a group of literal terrorists. I think it leads to the question, is it any surprise that the party that is pro-pay-for-play, pro-Putin, and now with Roy Moore pro-pedophilia, the fact that they're anti-children, is that any surprise, Amandi shockingly claimed. Consider for a moment the pure insanity of Amandi's first statement. Hillary Clinton literally paid for disinformation on her election opponent that came directly from Russian sources, but the Republican Party is somehow pro-Putin. Romoy has been accused of series of disgusting crimes against teenagers, and because the entire Republican Party hasn't immediately believed on unproven allegations, they are now pro-pedophilia. Keep in mind the Democratic Party itself has purposely covered up rape allegations against Bill Clinton for over 20 years. This is the insanity that is liberal media. Amani continued, and I think, Joy, this is emblematic, this chip scenario where you mentioned 9 million children without health insurance. I think if you take a step back, one has to ask themselves, and I think that American people should ask themselves, the broader question, what has the Republican Party in the last 10 years done to help the American people? What have they done? This is not a political party. This is a domestic terrorist group. Well, they were not in control, you idiots. Obama was the freaking president for the last 8 freaking years. So there you have it. Political opponents of liberal establishment are now being labeled domestic terrorists on par with the likes of Timothy McVeigh. After labeling any politician he agrees with a terrorist, Amandi's next logical step would be to call for them to be put in prison, and that is exactly what he did. And what I think the American people should consider when they ask themselves the quiet question, with a party that has done nothing to help American people, is to vote them out and consider possibly afterwards locking them up, Joy. This man, this guy is a freaking lunatic. My gosh. Look at the face of lunacy, folks. The face of crazed, rabid, totalitarian, fake nice guy, hardcore control freak, hardcore pedophile protecting, hardcore rape case Bill Clinton protecting, hardcore beta male predators, psychopathic, pathological predators who are preying on a dumbed down population to gain more funding for his stupid programs, to gain more taxpayer money, which he can steal, and to gain more political points from his cult, which is a leftist lunatics. I mean, these people are so sick. And it's not like we're even right-wing neocons. We hate the right-wing neocons too. We are head-wing ideology, head-wing Chinese kingdom builders. And these people are an enemy to humanity and enemies of the state. And we thank God for his kingdom, Chinese, that will be coming, where these politician, prostitute, political, operative Satanists cannot take over the country ever again. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Bursting inside us, we cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the sky. These hallelujah be multiplied. Your love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the skies. These hallelujahs be multiplied. Your love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the sky. These hallelujahs be multiplied. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the sky. These hallelujahs be multiplied. These hallelujahs be multiplied. Like blazing wildfire, singing your name. Your love is like radiant diamonds bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the skies. These hallelujahs be multiplied. Your love is like radiant diamond bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the sky. These hallelujahs be multiplied. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the sky. Like blazing wildfire.
Okay. Do I have to say 5? I can hear you. Can you hear me? I can hear you. You can call me Malcolm or Mal. I'll answer to either one. Yes, sir. Accuracy in academia. Well, we look for accuracy in academia, and since we usually don't find it, we fill a website and a newsletter with the inaccuracies we find. And we have more than enough material. Academia.org. We've been doing a lot on the Constitution lately because nobody teaches it. Ironically, even the First Amendment is out of favor.
Hi, I'm Joby Gorgas with Magnum Research. I'm here to tell you a little bit about our new L5 and 44 meg. This is our 5-inch model, lightweight model. It's got an aluminum grip frame, shaving down the weight so that we can get it under 50 ounces so that it's New York legal. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to properly hold the L5 for function. When shooting a Desert Eagle, you want to make sure that your dominant arm is locked out, pushing back into the back of the grip. Your secondary hand is holding around the front of the grip to keep the muzzle flip down. This gives you a good firm hold for proper cycling. We got to remember that the Desert Eagle is a gas-operated rotating bolt semi-automatic pistol, not unlike an AR system. I also want to talk to you about the stance for shooting the Desert Eagle. When shooting the Desert Eagle, you need a good firm base. So you want to step into your direction, get that arm locked, that support hand on, and lean forward into it so that you can handle that recoil.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, Monday, November 27th, 2017. And King Report live from the Chunhyung Palace Studios. To all the kings and queens of the Kingdom of God, good morning. Once again, it is 7:21 a.m. this morning. Beautiful morning. We are now joined with Malcolm A. Klein, Executive Director of Accuracy in Academia, a nonprofit research group reporting on bias in education. In that capacity, Klein edits AIA's monthly newsletter, Campus Report, and serves as editor-in-chief of AIA's website, www.academia.org. He has hosted a monthly online broadcast on www.righttalk.com. Klein previously worked as the editor of the National Journalism Center and has written for a variety of publications, including USA Today, Crisis Magazine, the American Enterprise Organization Trends, Insight Magazine, Human Events, the National Catholic Register, Nonprofit Times, and Consumer Research Magazine. A graduate of the University of Scranton, Klein also worked as an intern at National Journalism Center, contributing research for columnist Donald Lambro's syndicated column. The husband of the former Annie Grace Sungwame, and father of 3, the native of Pennsylvania now makes his home in Triangle, Virginia. Malcolm, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us this day.
Thank you. And by the way, let me say 2 things. One is that just on what you just read, my Catholic university, the University of Scranton that I graduated from, is actually doing something religious. They're having a theology lecture on, they're having a lecture on the theology of Bruce Springsteen.
Whoa, are you kidding me?
I
Oh
am
my
not
goodness.
kidding you.
Wow, I guess every Catholic has to hear that
Also-
one.
Yes. Also, as you point out, my wife is from Zimbabwe, which is finally changing leaders after about 4 decades. And I just want to say that the deposed dictator, Robert Mugabe, has as his house guest the deposed Ethiopian dictator, Haile Mengistu. Now, if he has to flee the country and decides to take his house guest, Mr. Mengistu, with him, the nearest place they can decamp is the residence of Namibian dictator Sam Nujoma. And that sets up an interesting question. In a household with 3 dictators, who do the servants obey?
That is certainly an interesting set of events that you presented before this morning. Now, I know that you are the executive director of Accuracy
By the way,
Academia.
can I point something else out?
Go ahead, yes.
I just want to point out that African studies departments are hard to find. Are not hard to find. They're not hard to find. What's hard to find is an African studies department that will admit that there are dictators in Africa,
Right.
even though that describes 50 out of 54 countries in the continent.
Wow. It's true. There is such a massive bias in education and in higher, quote, higher learning, isn't there?
Well, it goes even deeper than that, and it's rather linked because it used to be that universities are a repository of knowledge. It's getting to the point where it stops before you hit the gates. I want to make one other point about that. I would be willing to bet you that you could quiz 10 African studies professors and find out that none of them know how many countries are on the continent.
Right. Very true. I wouldn't be surprised at all seeing some of the incompetence of these educators, quote, educators at, quote, higher education, schools of learning.
They used to be guides to knowledge. The professors, at some time before I was born, apparently, and maybe a little bit after I was born, but now they're obstacles.
Right. It's interesting. Yeah.
We go every year to the Modern Language Association, which is the largest association of professors in the world. Every English department is represented there. Every English department hires there. Not just English departments, but studies. Anything you can slap the word studies behind. You name it. Transgender, American, racial, gender, and something like 700 panels, 3 professors per panel over 4 days. And I can't tell you the state my brain is in after a half a week of this. Out of 700 panels, you can find maybe 20 combined on Dickens, Shakespeare, any author that would comprise the traditional canon. And when you do, you often find that they're doing entire studies and panels on great authors and their books, and the books don't match up to the thesis.
Wow. Well, the
Let me
kids
give
are
you
now
one example.
told that Shakespeare and the classics and Hemingway and all these traditional books that were used to be read, authors that used to be read, Dickens and all. They're told that all these are white supremacist racists.
And it's even stranger. I went to one on Moby Dick, right? And Herman Melville. And one presentation was, of course, on how it was really a story about gay rights, which is mystifying since half the chapters deal with whaling. And then another was about how it was a Cold War allegory, which is really amazing because it came out the century before the Cold War started, So I guess Melville was really prescient. But
he was prescient. He was a prophet.
Yeah, but even if you take out that obvious ideological layer, I watched one girl, and she probably got hired off of this thesis. She was going into Dickens' continued use of the glass imagery in his last novel, And so I took the trouble to actually read that last novel and found one reference to glass in about 1,000 pages.
Oh my gosh.
Continued use, At any rate, I consider myself
tell us
a
about
journalist,
tell us
and
about
what you
AIA
get-
and accuracy in academia, reporting on
Yeah.
bias in education.
Yeah. It is very hard to find anything on the Constitution or the founding, really, in most universities. When it is there, of course, it's negative. But going even further, you find that they'll do a course on the Constitution without actually reading it. This is not unusual. I read this widely used text by a long-dead professor at Columbia, a chapter on Lincoln, 47 pages. He never mentions the Gettysburg Address. Which is kind of basic, and it only takes up, by the way, about 250 words.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
So-
so much propaganda being crammed down children's throats nowadays, talking about the founding fathers, the Constitution being a white supremacist, racist slave document, all of these kind of things. And the kids never even read the Constitution. They just already assume and believe that it's already a slave document.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard also, separation of church and state, it's in the Constitution. And by a happy coincidence, I actually have one in my briefcase, courtesy of the Cato Institute. So I'll hand it to him and say, show me. I missed it.
Oh my goodness.
I highly advise your listeners to do that, by the way. Get one of those. There's a number of organizations that have them, but the Cato Institute comes immediately to mind. Just carry a copy of the Pocket Constitution and try that whenever somebody tells you of something that's in the Constitution that usually isn't.
Yep. Right,
Yeah.
right.
And it's so sad because our history has got some fascinating stories connected with it. Just fascinating.
Share with us some.
But you have to go
a
outside
story of-
academia to get them.
Share with us one of the stories that has made an impact on you about the founding fathers.
I'll tell you one thing, and by the way, the best source of this lately, I think, is David McCullough. Although there's a few others like my late boss, M. Stanton Evans, who also had wonderful histories of the period. But all this story about rich white men protecting their treasure, McCullough points out something interesting. He says, if we were so rich and protecting our treasure, how come we didn't have any banks? You know, how come we borrowed to finance the revolution?
Right.
If we were so rich. But see, he does what most academics don't. He goes to primary sources. You know, he practically lived in the Adams Library, read all the correspondence between John Adams and Abigail, and Jefferson, while he was writing his masterful book on John Adams. You know, a fascinating book, by the way, and academics generally are not fond of him, although he occasionally teaches there. They say he, you know, is too popular. It just reduces everything down to a story. Well, you have to know the story first, you know. But the Adams book is, I'm actually reading it right now, you know. It's just crammed full of information. I did not know, for example, that this was just a clause. The governor of New Jersey was the illegitimate son of Benjamin Franklin.
Wow, interesting.
Fascinating stuff.
Yes,
Forrest
you know,
McDonald also had wonderful histories.
It's really interesting how, you know, I saw an interview with Camille Paglia, and she was saying that the academy has been taken over literally by, you know, bureaucrats, salaried bureaucrats, and she was talking about the left, or she was talking about the leftist movement in the 1960s with the hippies and everything, the sexual revolution and etc. And she was saying that there's no more remnant of that because the leftists were always traditionally against the establishment. They were trying to be anti-establishment, trying to get away from this kind of centralized control. And now the, quote, left, progressive left is all about centralized control. They can't get enough of it. They're complete authoritarian collectivists. And she was saying now the people that dominate academia are literally not only all Marxists, mostly Marxists, openly Marxist, by the way, but at the same time, they are completely incompetent bureaucrats who are there just to try to, rise up the ranks through, and are pressed for their position and power and their status.
Yes, in fact, that's also a good point because a lot of the really insane stuff we associate with academia of late, maybe the past 10, 20 years, has come not from professors, although I'm not letting him off the hook, but from administrators. Speech codes, for example. Even when they stopped calling them speech codes, they still have them. Now they have free speech zones. And
right.
At a ridiculous administrative layer, it's at least half, sometimes more. But I managed to cover something at the Modern Language Association. It was interesting. I found out that Berkeley's been having labor strife, which is hilarious given their historically Marxist intent. But one of the union representatives was there, and she actually had a good point. They were seeking a raise that would bring them, I think, to 60,000, and one could argue that 60,000 is a lot to pay cafeteria workers. But on the other hand, you know, administrators make at least twice as much, and what the hell do they do? At least, you know, the cafeteria workers are a defined job. And I asked her about the administrative layer, and she told me in the cafeteria there is one administrator for every 2 workers.
Wow.
You know? So I said to her, so every other one of you has no administrator?
Oh, goodness. That is unbelievable waste. And that's why, of course, the children and the tuition are going up like skyrocketing like crazy, putting these kids in debt for the next 20 years of their life, creating them as basically becoming indentured servants. You know, and just it's so absurd. They're getting all these useless degrees in these useless departments, which have absolutely no application in the real market. Nobody wants to hire them. They're arrogant, they're narcissistic, they're elitist, they become entitled, and they become Marxist, which of course is one of the most deadliest ideologies in the 20th century, murdering over 100 million innocent people. I mean, through genocidal revolution. It's just so insane. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this with more with Malcolm A. Klein, Executive Director of Accuracy in Academia. Stay with us.
I'm down here at the range today. I just learned a new technique from the father of the .44 Magnum, Elmer Keith, which is called shooting out of the notch, which allows you to make really long distance shots and still have an extremely precise sight picture. So I brought my CW9 car down, and with this little gun, we're gonna shoot this little munchkin at 200 yards up in the hills, applying this technique, and hopefully we'll make the shot. To apply this technique, instead of using the blade of the front sight lined up with the top of the rear sight, I'm going to take the dot of the front sight and raise it up so that it's out of the notch, but I'm still going to keep the front sight on my target. Bringing that front sight up like that is going to compensate for the bullet drop over that excessively long distance with just this little gun. So if applied right, we should be making contact. Let's see how it goes. I saw this shot, so I'm a little bit out of breath because you gotta run to make sure that is what I thought it was, and it was. So while making this shot, from that distance with these white dot sights, it literally would cover the entire target. You couldn't see what you were shooting. So using the Elmer Keith technique, you were able to raise it out of the back notch. I can't breathe. Out of the back notch, allowing you to keep your accuracy, aim, and also still see the target, which is key because it was a hard shot, not gonna lie. But yeah, it went great, and Elmer knows what he's talking about. And for such a small gun to be able to take that hit, I'm very impressed with this. All right, guys, be sure to like and share, and I'll see you out on the range. That was awesome. Hey, can I try that one? Yeah, let's see with the 380. Does everybody have eyes and ears?
Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And we
Okay.
are back. Welcome back to the King's Report, Monday, November 27th, 2017. We are back with Malcolm A. Klein, Executive Director, Accuracy in Academia. And Malcolm, we were talking to the break of so many things. The last thing we were talking about is there's a couple websites now that are emerging that are identifying particular professors, classes, particular schools that push a neo-Marxist agenda and or a leftist, quote, progressive, but really neo-Marxist agenda. And you were just talking about that. Can you finish your point on that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And in a crazy way, the declared Marxists are actually more reasonable than the undeclared ones. The ones
Right.
that don't think they are, but actually pretty much go down the line with it. The declared ones are at least more honest about it. Although that gets really strange too, because there's a professor of history at Montclair State University, he's still there, Grover C. Furr. I'm not a big cat person, but if I ever had a cat, I think I would name it Grover C. Furr. But at any rate, he is head of the Marxist caucus at the MLA, the Modern Language Association, because they think the regular Modern Language Association is too conservative. You know?
So how do these Marxists get away with it? Because if you can't walk around academia saying that you support Hitler, but if you support Marx, you're supporting an ideology, radical ideology that's murdered like over 100 million people in the last century. I mean, it is way more murderous and genocidal than even Hitler was.
Well, Grover C. Furr's thesis was Stalin was framed.
Oh, yes, of course. And of course, the 60 million individuals that he killed were all part of that conspiracy, weren't they? Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I mean, never mind that. First, you had the Black Book of Communism that collected all this information. Then there was a window where a fairly long one where scholars could actually go to the archives of the old Soviet Union. And even after they shut, thanks to Putin, the ones in Eastern Europe remained open. And some of them are open to this day, where you could actually double check these numbers because you had the actual orders to liquidate sitting there, you know? And for a while even, the archives of the KGB were open, you know? Because I know a couple of people who've been there. And all of which show that if anything, the 100 million dead estimate that came out of the Black Book of Communism in '97, published by Harvard, one of the few things we can give Harvard credit for these days.
Yeah.
or for a while, even those were conservative estimates. Let me point something out, by the way. This is interesting, and I've long thought it was pointed towards a potential solution. One thing, just about everything academics hate about academia is just about all that's remaining that's good about academia. They complain about the research university. In fairness, you'll get better information out of the research end of most universities than you will out of the classroom. You know, Berkeley, of all places, published a study that the New Deal didn't work, you know, with actual numbers from actual government agencies, something you would never get in a classroom on campus.
Right.
There is something at Harvard, insane as the classrooms are up there, called the National Bureau of Economic Research. They actually published a study. They were trying to, they were surprised by the conclusions, actually, but they looked at what happens and how many private sector jobs you lose when you add a public sector job, because they thought it was nothing, and they found out that you lose 2 private sector jobs every time you add a government job.
Wow.
Every one government job costs, and they were surprised at these findings, but they published them to their undying credit. And a big reason why there's more accuracy and honesty coming out, you'd never hear that in a Harvard classroom. And you certainly would never hear that at the Kennedy School of Government up there. But
oh, good, is right.
A big reason why you'll get more accuracy out of these research centers is because they are the for-profit end.
Yes, right.
They're
right.
about the only free market there is on these campuses, because they actually have to deliver these studies, you know, for a fee, and if they're not up to snuff, they don't get paid.
Well, it's interesting. Aaron Rousseau was on film when he admitted that he was told by David Rockefeller that they invested, the Rockefellers and the Ford Foundation, you name it, started investing in 1960s women's studies and different Middle Eastern studies, etc. Because, of course, they had political agendas. You know, they wanted to get more taxpayers to pay more taxes. They wanted to get the women population in the workforce to separate, you know, and break down families, because that's the goal of every, you know, communist, system, is to break up the family, break up the social bonds which hold us together, and the protective units that hold us together, so that we're just easily to divide and conquer. And he was, of course, killed after he did his whole expose and documentary on the IRS tax scam. But it's interesting how you have all this foreign money and foreign powers that are literally buying off professors and departments, getting their very dangerous tentacles into academia, which of course is then breeding and educating, or you can say inculcating or indoctrinating the next generation of minds.
You mean like the Confucian Institutes?
Yeah, oh, wow.
Which prevented the Dalai Lama from speaking?
Right,
which are
right.
funded by communist China? You mean like that?
That's right. Yeah, I had a nice audience with the Dalai Lama, about an hour. We spent time together, and I was banned from China after that.
You are so lucky.
I was banned from China. Cannot go back to cannot go to China. I mean, I was also in China at the Shaolin Temple, but but now I can't go back.
Well, maybe now that Mugabe's out, I can go to Zimbabwe.
Well, you know, Malcolm, tell us a little about your organization, Accuracy for Academia.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We cover every professor we can, every course we can, every college we can. We have quite a database up there. If you go to academia.org, type in the name of pretty much any professor, any school, and you're very likely to get a number of stories, you know, and describing exactly what they do. Because one thing we try to do, I mentioned the Modern Language Association, but even in D.C., for years, what we've done is actually go to lectures these professors give when they're in Washington. Because what you'll get when a professor leaves campus to give a speech pretty much is the classroom lecture, and they'll helpfully tell you that what they tell their students is, which means that you're getting the classroom lecture. I'll tell you something. I just covered a bunch of law professors at Cato, and there is no sympathy for cake bakers who want to be a little choosy about their assignments, which is, I mean, it's long been with businesses an agreement between customer and business. Oh, you do this? Great, I'll pay you to do this. Oh, you don't do that? I'll go somewhere else that does that. You know? So,
well, they have no problem if
you
there's like
want
a
a wedding
Muslim
cake
baker
bake,
that won't
there
bake a
are
cake for
other
a gay
bakers
wedding,
who
but
can
if it's a
do it.
Christian baker that won't bake a cake for a gay wedding, then they got a problem. They got to shut him down. But the Muslim is fine. I saw a video where they actually a guy pretending to be gay went into a Muslim bakery and asked, would you do a cake for my gay wedding? And the Muslim guy said no, and nothing happened to him.
I guess that could be an out for the cake baker.
Well,
Baronelle Stutzman, the florist, who has served gay customers. She just didn't want to do a gay wedding, you know. And I heard this law professor say, we need to figure out how to regulate Baronelle Stutzman's business without regulating Baronelle Stutzman. I'm like, lady, do you understand the free market? You know, they've obviously been out of it all their lives.
Well, yeah, it's so interesting because the leftists will go on and on about how evil free markets and how capitalism is all about money. But then you see all their solutions for all the world's ills that they want to propose are just increasing more money to their federal bureaucracies and their federal, programs. It's just all about money for them. It's money, money, money. We want to steal more money from taxpayer to give more money to my program. It's just more money, more money. That's the solution. We spend a national average, I believe, on elementary schools and middle high school students. Some districts spend up to $10,000 per child, and they have abysmal performance rates.
And it's interesting because the only progress in public education is occurring in charter schools.
Right. I mean, shouldn't we have a tax voucher, just like Sweden does, that allows the family to decide whether or not they want to send their child to public or private or charter or religious or homeschool them? Give the parents more options and let them use the taxes they're already putting in for the purpose of educating their children.
One would think so. And it's interesting because with charter schools, parents are actually rising up in inner cities, and saying they want charter schools.
Right.
By the way, I want to make one point. I make a point of using the phrase free market instead of capitalism.
Right.
Because my old boss, M. Stanton Evans, never used the phrase capitalism. And capitalism is actually a creation, literally, of Karl Marx.
Right. That's true.
They use capital, so we'll call it capitalism. It's Marxist logic. Stan used to say, a Marxist is an economic determinist with no knowledge of economics. You know.
Right.
But I also found out through bonding with people from the NLA something I don't recommend to anyone. At any rate, I asked this one of these professors at one of these panels, you know, and show me the inaccuracy in these Texas public school standards. You know, there actually is some, but not what she was talking about. So she says, get with me afterwards. And she said, oh, just Google it. She says, and then she says, I mean, they call capitalism the free market. So I realized if it gets that visceral a reaction, we must be on the right track. So free market, free market, free market. There.
Well, it's interesting because Marx actually, of course, apparently he was a Luciferian, but he believed that actually through the process of free markets and what he called capitalism, that eventually you would have a rising up of the proletariat class, and communism would be a natural progression out of capitalism. Of course, that never happened. I mean, it never happened like that. So then, of course, you had to go to the leftist, revolutionaries, and then try to start violent revolutions, take over countries. And it's something weird about the intellectual sort of academic class that is so hell-bent on trying to control people's thinking, control people in general with central planning, you name it, that attracts them, sort of allures, there's a great allure to centralized control and Marxist ideology where everything is centralized to the state. I mean, so it's very scary to see our education go down this very dangerous route and brainwashing all these children.
There's a rock and roll song from when I was a teenager. I forget who did it because one of the lines is, if he can't even run his own life, I'll be damned if he runs mine.
That was at a time when rock and roll actually talked about real things, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Also the time when Pink Floyd says, hey, teacher, leave those kids alone.
It's so interesting.
Right after they said, we don't need no thought control.
Right. I mean, they used to be anti-establishment and want to actually rebel against the establishment. Now they're just trained, young people are trained with pop music to completely buy into the establishment, and Hollywood and the stars are complete slaves and employees of the establishment. So it's just become this mechanism of artificial and synthetic control that young people are just oblivious to. Thank God that of the internet, they're starting to get, different opinions and starting to say, hey, I'm actually having to think for myself for once in my life.
We tend to forget. I remember my late boss, M. Stanton Evans, when he came back to one of we have seminars whenever we can, featuring speakers offering Capitol Hill interns alternative information. And we generally have speakers you can't get on campus, but Stan was one of these, and he said, it's gotten so bad, and it was always bad, it's getting worse in academia, and you really need to develop alternative sources of information.
Yes. Absolutely, no question about it.
And it was interesting, too, because one of my first assignments that I kind of took on myself at academia, at Accuracy in Academia, was interviewing the kind of person only I could find, a Republican psychologist, At any rate, but she said she's had kids come to her afterwards, after lectures. This was 14 years ago, when they were thinking more clearly. These kids would come to her and say, we know you're a Republican because of what you don't say. Because we're not the ones sneaking our ideology into lectures.
Right.
Or beating kids over the head with it.
Exactly. It is such an incredible state of affairs. It's important to be awake. Everybody go to www.academia.org. Thank you so much, Malcolm, for joining us today. He's the Executive Director of Accuracy of Academia. And he's raising the alarm, raising awareness for people so that they are aware of the propaganda and of the professors and of their records of whether or not they're actually educating your children or indoctrinating them. Thank you so much, Malcolm, for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us on this edition of the King's Report. We will see you tomorrow, 5 a.m. sharp, on the King's Report. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.